Greetings in the precious name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Dear friends, every year in July, we commemorate a great personality of our church with many ecclesial activities. Unfortunately, this year, due to the unexpected wreckage triggered by COVID-19, our mode of celebrations was changed from public space to online space. It is in this context our beloved Father in faith, servant of God, Archbishop Ivanios, brings us together in this e-space. We regard him as one of the greatest personalities of the Indian Church. Among the different names attributed to Mar Ivanios, the father of the reunion movement stands unique due to its ecclesiastical significance. In fact, it took him more than 2 decades of study, discussions, reflections and prayers to reach the Catholic communion, and accordingly, the historical event of reunion movement held on 20th September 1930 is marked in golden letters. See his unique contribution towards the ecclesial communion in the 20th century. The great English writer G.K. Chesterton described him as the new man of India. As we go through the pages of history, it is clear that the Great Schism in 1653 made a deep scar of division in the mystical body of Christ in India. The group that publicly renounced the relationship with the Portuguese missionaries eventually walked out of Catholic communion. This Puthangur community of St. Thomas Christians, later known as Malankara Church, was sailing like a ship without a destiny. The unending disputes for power as well as quarrels for possessions were like rough waves that shattered the ship. This made them divide up many times. Mar Ivanios was the person who took initiative to heal this wound of division as well as to regain the missionary seal of this apostolic church. Today, in this Ivanian Yathra, let us reflect and meditate upon the Serampore days of Mar Ivanios and try to see how such experiences shaped his ecclesial vision and missionary seal. This will help us to appreciate the Ivanian vision and mission behind the reunion movement. Let us begin our reflections by understanding the ecclesial situation at Kerala and Calcutta at the beginning of 20th century. During this time, there was a debate in the Malankara Church on the temporal power of the Patriarch of the Jacobite Church over the Malankara Church. The then Malankara Metropolitan, Vattachari Mar Ivanios, was hesitant to accept the claim, and this provoked the then Patriarch Abdullah, who was on visit to Kerala, to expel the Metropolitan from his throne. To come out of this crucial situation, he invited the ex-Patriarch Abdel Mishigo to Kerala and later established the throne of Catholicos in the Malankara Church on 19th September 1912. The mastermind behind the Metropolitan was none other than Father P.T. Givergis Panikkaru, the principal of M.D. Seminary High School, Kottayam. Mar Ivanios records such events in his autobiography as follows. Even before Patriarch Abdel Mishigo set out for Malankara, we had correspondence with him. We made it clear in those letters that the erection of the Catholicate was imperative for the flourishment and the growth of the Malankara Church. This young priest was enthusiastic to work for his mother church. He wanted to renew the ecclesial vitality of this apostolic church for fulfilling the divine goal of evangelization of India. He had a dream of developing his school, a prestigious education institution of the Malankara Church, into a college. At the same time, his heart was broken many times while seeing the conflicts and quarrels between leaders. He narrated this with tears in his autobiography. These experiences have enabled us to observe and smell the stench of the filth that lay accumulated at the bottom of the Malankara church. In fact, he was in search of finding a way out to renew his mother church. Considering the ecclesial situation of Calcutta, it was one of the important Christian centers of that time in India. The foreign missionaries considered Calcutta as a center of their missionary activities. Catholic Church and the Anglican Church had sent missionaries regularly to this ancient city. The missionary activities were organized by the Archdiocese of Calcutta on the Catholic side and the leaders of the High Church on the Anglican side. It is important to mention that the Christian University of Serampore, run by the Anglican missionaries, was a prestigious Christian universities of their time, and hence many loved to study and teach there. From this ecclesial background, both in Kerala and in Calcutta, let us see how Ivanios was brought to Serampore in 1910. The Anglican Church convoked a missionary conference at Edinburgh to discuss the missionary activities all over the world. It was the first international conference on Christian mission to discuss on the division among the Christians. Representing the Indian missionaries, Dr. Howells, the principal of the Serampore College, presented the mission report of India in the conference at Edinburgh. The delegates from all over the world seriously deliberated on the issue and came to the conclusion that for the universal realization of Christian mission, there needs communion between different churches. This will assure the cooperation between different missionaries working in the same land. Thus, the conference proposed communion for mission. The conference went further from theory to praxis. The delegates proposed to convoke follow-up conferences at a regional wise to bring this message of ecclesial communion to grassroots level of mission work. Thus, a students' conference was proposed to convoke at Calcutta, and the organizers in India thought of inviting the leaders of Syrian churches in Kerala, and Reverend Dr. Mott, an American missionary, was the main organizer. The main purpose of this conference was, as Ivanios narrates in his own words, to think seriously about the steps to be taken for the propagation of the good news all over India. In fact, the theme of the conference attracted the mind of Father P.T. Givargis, who was seriously thinking about evangelizing the whole India. Since the Malankara Metropolitan Ivanios was invited, Father P.T. Givargis, the right hand of the Metropolitan, got the opportunity to accompany him to Calcutta. He attended this conference not mere as a secretary, rather as a theological expert from the Malankara Church. We could reasonably presume this because his interventions in the conference were so rational and theological as to get noticed by Dr. Howells. Being impressed by this educated young priest from Kerala, without second thought, Dr. Howells invited him to join the theological faculty of Serampore College. Ivanios had already known this institution. He says, "We learned more or less about the Serampore College that it was one of the European Protestant institutions where there was ample scope and encouragement for the study of English language and sacred theology." Ivanios was filled with mixed emotions as he received the invitation. He says, Dr. Howells, who worked relentlessly for the progress of the Serampore College, which shone forth as the sole Christian university in India, asked us whether it would be possible for us to leave our native place and go over to Serampore as professor of the college. Though it was an honor for Father P.T. Givargis, he did not take this invitation seriously until he received the invitation in writing after returning to Kerala. Taking a decision To leave Kottayam to Serampore was like a spiritual agony that Ivanios had gone through in his life. He recalls those dark days as follows. Truly speaking, we were disturbed with regard to our going to Serampore College or not. Often this very thought had been disturbing our mind. We regretted since several days that we could not decide on any one of the two. This agitated state of mind affected not only our appetite and activity, but also our peaceful sleep. Unquote. He spent many nights without sleeping because his nightmares were filled with the empty seminary school and the Ivanios on the one side and the Serampore College and Dr. Howells on the other side. As the days passed, his heart was leaning towards the Serampore College, thinking that during our stay in Serampore, we would be able to fulfill whatever others expected us to do for the prosperity of the Malankara Church. As he got permission from his beloved metropolitan, finally, Ivanios took a definitive yes for leaving Kottayam to Serampore. He writes in his autobiography, "Our appointment as professor of the first grade college in a city quite close to the capital of the then Indian Empire did not make us infatuated so as to ignore our own community or to forget our obligation towards it. We firmly believed that the growth and the prosperity of our church depended on, to a certain extent, on the formation of its clergy and their erudition in theology. Hence it was our long and earnest desire to start a theology college for the clergy of Malankara Church. Perhaps our stay in Serampore would accomplish this desire." Unquote. Ivanios believed that the academic link with the Serampore College would lead the MD seminary to a glorious future. In fact, these thoughts inspired him to take a decision in favor of accepting the invitation of Dr. Howells. The history proved that Ivanios was right in his decision. In 1913, Father P.T. Giveris reached Serampore and with his students. Before reaching Calcutta, he got assurance from Dr. Howells for all arrangements that would help him to lead a life suitable to a Syrian priest. Ivanios wrote in this Giridivam, "Dr. Howells had assured us that there would be convenience at the college chapel for teaching catechism of the Eastern Church and to conduct the divine worship according to the traditions of the Syrian Church." Unquote. He taught Syriac and Eastern theology. He also served as the secretary of higher theological department in the college. During his days in Serampore, his mind was anxious to bring many young men and women from Kerala, especially the young seminarians, to give them higher education. He brought them to Calcutta and found places for them in different universities. He approached Varsol sisters for the young women from Kerala, thinking that they would be given good training in English language along with religious formation. But many might find it difficult to meet the expenses. In that case, Ivanios thought of spending his salary for it. He wrote, "If that wouldn't suffice, the college authorities would be consulted and some appeals could be sent to benefactors." Unquote. Thus he spent rupees 10,000 per month for their stay and study in Serampore. Besides, he spent his income for those students from Kerala studying in Allahabad, Calcutta and Madras. Such was his contribution that the metropolitan appreciated him for spending huge money equal to the amount of Vatican. As a guru, he interacted with his disciples and motivated them to be educated for serving their church and community. He was like a vigilant pastor. He took precautions lest our deacons and the other Syrian Christian students might be influenced by false teachings and led astray from the true faith, since the college being an institution of the Protestants. He took special attention to teach them Syriac, for he For as he penned in his autobiography, I quote, "The liturgy of our church, its theology, philosophical expositions, history, etc. are all written in Syriac. Hence a working knowledge and expertise in it is inevitable to our priest." Unquote. It is a great contribution of Mar Ivanios to the Syriac literature in India that he took all the troubles to convince Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Calcutta, and Dr. Howells, the Principal of the Serampore College, to approve Syriac as an optional subject in the above mentioned university and college. Following this, the University of Madras also accepted this ancient language of Christianity as an optional subject of the curriculum of bachelor's and master's degrees. Most of the contemporary people forget this historical fact when they appreciate Mar Ivanios for preparing Syriac grammar book which he compiled during his Serampore days. The vision and educational attempts of Mar Ivanios during the Serampore days are innumerable. Many later leaders of Malankara Church got higher education only because of his personal efforts. He ardently wished to have educated priests as well as young men and women for the upliftment of his community. His whole life in Serampore was in view of this purpose. He spent his time, money and contacts for achieving this goal. He was proud of in seeing his disciples coming out with flying colors. Among them, Deacon Givargis Tacheril, who secured MA, became a professor in Serampore College, whereas Deacon John Kartamangat secured MSc in Natural Science. The educational contributions of Father P.T. Givargis Panikar to the Malankara Church were immense, for he launched an educational revolution by becoming an instrument of higher education for men. Even those who oppose his reunion movement would accept this educational revolution in Malankara Church by Mar Ivanios. It is to be noted that somehow we forget to incorporate his educational contributions during Serampore days with his educational contributions after reunion. Now let us turn our thoughts to his life in Calcutta. He was the first priest from Malankara to get the privilege of teaching in one of the then reputed Christian colleges in India. Though being a professor in Serampore College was a prestigious status, Father Givargis never took pride in it. He led a simple life and used to spend his time to share his knowledge with his students. He loved his students and stayed with them like a guru, imparting the true knowledge. As a student searching for wisdom, his evening walks were in search of wisdom. At the same time, there are many untold stories of Mar Ivanios while he was in Calcutta. We proudly remember Saint Teresa of Calcutta for her humanitarian service to the poor and needy in the slums of Calcutta. Unfortunately, we forget the similar service rendered by a Malayali priest in the second decade of the last century. Fortunately, we had an eyewitness for such a humanitarian person, Mar Ivanios, and it was his most trusted deacon, Jacob, who later on accompanied by reuniting with the Catholic Church. The first foreign autobiographer of Mar Ivanios, Margaret Gibbons, in his book Archbishop Mar Ivanios, Apostle of Church Union, writes, I quote, "Then there were his visits to sick of the Calcutta slums. Taking that same deacon with him, he used to go at frequent intervals to the crowded dwellings of the wretched and the unfortunate, where babies suffering from malnutrition were to be found." Unquote. This good Samaritan with a long beard touched many hearts as he was pouring out the compassionate love of God to the underprivileged. The narration continues, I quote, "He would wash the smelly little bodies, bathe them in oil, and give them back soothed and refreshed to their poor mothers, unquote. In fact, he was like a modern Assisi who kissed the smelly wounds of lepers. I quote, moreover, in his ruthless efforts after self-conquest, he would force himself to kiss the scrofulous eruptions that disfigured the burning skin of those pitiful little ones before he applied the salves he had brought with him, unquote. These untold narrations make us feel proud of this great man who put into practice the slogan Manava Seva, Madhava Seva, even before 5 decades of Mother Teresa's active presence in Calcutta. Now it is clear that it was not accidental that Mar Ivanios gave instruction from Serampore to his assistants to build an orphanage before constructing the ashram at Perinal. He was like a vigilant pastor who had always compassion for the poor and the needy. His attempts to feed thousands after the reunion with the help of Catholics from other continents were true signs of this humanism. During his stay in Serampore College, he read many books on Indian culture and spirituality, which gave him better understanding of the real soul of Indian heritage. Mar Ivanios, through his constant study and dialogue, embraced our centuries-old rich traditions of our motherland. It is because of this great opening, he always placed the cultural patrimony of our country at high. His knowledge was not constrained to the 4 walls of libraries. His personal dialogues with Hindu leaders in Calcutta enlarged his spiritual and cultural horizons. He never gave up a single chance to talk with any Hindu leader. Being a genuine seeker of truth, his thirst for wisdom never ceased. He took all the troubles to visit the Shantiniketan of Sri Rabindranath Tagore, who won Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913, and the Sabarmati ashram of Mahatma Gandhi, who was a forefront fighter of Indian freedom struggle. These 2 ashrams, led by 2 great personalities of India, were centers of Indian culture and spirituality. These ashrams explore the rich spiritual traditions of the Indian culture. They also provide space for all those who seek truth in the serenity of Indian tradition. Moreover, such ashrams help the people to explore the rich spiritual wealth of our land. Adopting meditation methods and a lifestyle suiting to our mother nature helped many to attain the peace of mind as well as to see the supreme realities with a genuine heart. The visit to such ashrams was really a pilgrimage for Mar Ivanios, who was aspiring for monastic life. The experiences and dialogues in these ashrams not only widened his mind to be proud of the rich cultural and spiritual traditions of our land, but also created in him a passion for ashram life. His aspiration towards sannyasa became stronger during this time. He wrote in his autobiography, "The desire for sannyasa was in us from our tender age. However, it can be said that it was when we were at Serampore College, the thought strongly pulled our mind to the decision that a religious order must be established with the conviction that a genuine devotion to God is the basis of spiritual growth of both individual and community." Unquote. With this deep conviction in Serampore, he started to live a quasi-ashram life, renouncing all the pleasures of the world. He was training his body and mind to get the true knowledge from above. As he began to lead an ashram style of life, some of his beloved disciples also accompanied him in the path of sannyasa. One among them was Deacon Jacob, who later on became the Bishop of Bethany with the name Jacob Mar Theophilos. Mar Ivanios did a detailed study on the religious life in the West and sannyasa in the East. He narrates such attempts in Giridipam. I quote, "We used to visit many ashrams of both the Roman Catholics and the High Church in North India, and held discussions with their superiors and gathered knowledge from them. During this period, we read many books regarding sannyasa and its rules and regulations. Thus, he was convinced that it is only through founding an institution by chosen people who have chosen the service of God as their life principle and who are nourished by ardent devotion to God could bring about development to the Syrian community and effectiveness to the work of evangelization. With the permission of the Metropolitan Father Peter Giver started to live a sannyasa life together with his companions in college hostels. He writes, I quote, "Immediately the deacons and we started observing them. Actually, they were only the trivial and insignificant practices of sannyasa. The deacons had to observe the following rules strictly: to attend the prayers of the hour at the proper times, the daily meditation and the examination of conscience. Besides these, from the time of the prayers of the Sutoro till the morning prayers and meditation were over, grand silence was to be kept by all." Unquote. Thus, before founding the Bedini Ashram at Mundammala in Kerala, Ivanios and his collaborators had initial training in sannyasa way of life. At the same time, he was also convinced of the need of having religious women in Kerala. It is because of his conviction that the women of our homeland would progress spiritually, educationally, and socially from women having higher education and training in religious life. That is why he brought many young women from Kerala. The first one among them was Mrs. Achama, daughter of Advocate E.J. John. Later on, she was known as Mrs. John Mathai. Moreover, Mother Edith of Barrister Convent promised him to give training to these young girls in English as well as in religious life. He sent them to Diocesan College at Calcutta and a convent at Barrister for higher education. For the education of girls, Ivanios got assistance also from Reverend Father Alexander Kaniyandara, who was studying at Bishop's College, Calcutta. When convent life for girls was unheard in the Malagra Church, Ivanios dreamed that as they complete their higher education, he himself will go to Tirumulapuram with them to start a school for girls. At the end of 1918, Father Givergis was convinced of starting an ashram for men and a convent for women for the intellectual and spiritual renewal of the Malagar community. Soon his thought went in search of finding a suitable place to found this new ashram. Initially he thought of leaving to North India, somewhere in Punjab, so that he could freely continue his evangelization works. But by the providence of God, his thoughts anchored at Mundammala in Pathanamthitta when Advocate E.J. John offered 100 acres of land from his property near Vadachirikara for establishing a new ashram at Perunal. As an initial fund for the landscaping of a new ashram, he received contributions from his well-wishers in Calcutta and in Kerala. To register this new land in government, Mr. Maman Mapla gave unconditional support to Ivanios. It was Mathai Panikar, the younger brother of Ivanios, who first visited the place and identified the plot for the new ashram. Moreover, his father gave him the amount to be remitted in government treasury for the registration of the land. Thus, everything was arranged for the starting of a new ashram in Kerala, and thus Ivanios said adieu to Serampore in 1990. As we put a curtain to the last scene of Serampore days, we can say that it was a period of preparations for Ivanios. He prepared himself intellectually, mentally, and spiritually for the cause of evangelization of India, a dear concept of his heart. For him, those were days of dialogues and experiments with the different traditions of spirituality as well as ecclesial living. He was deeply convinced of his future mission and had a clear vision of his life that can be summarized in 5 points. First of all, the God-given mission of the Malankara Church is evangelization of India. The second one, in India we need many young men and women who have true devotion to God and genuine love for Him to lead men to God. Third one, for that Ivanios proposed the famous slogan, to possess God is nobler than to serve God. He had the determination to begin an ashram for giving training to genuine evangelizers for India, synthesizing Western monasticism and Indian sannyasa. Fifth and final one, he had ardent desire to begin a religious congregation for women to aid the missionary works in India, especially in situations where men could not get access or cooperation in the work of evangelization. As a conclusion, we could say that the Serampore days of Father P.T. Givargis was like a spiritual refinery that purified him with the fire of God's love and the zeal of missionary work. God was preparing him as an instrument of Catholic communion in India. Serampore formed him a great personality of Indian Church as a holy sannyasi and as an ardent missionary. It is a fact that any endeavor with the long preparations will produce innumerable fruits. That is what we see in his life. Let us thank God for giving him as our beloved Father in faith. Now it is our turn to walk in his path to serve God and his people. Thank you very much. God bless you.